All right, MYB community, thank you so much for coming back to us for episode number 258 of the Minding Your Business podcast, entrepreneurship, real estate, trending news. There's still no business like minding your own. Even at episode 258, I love saying that. There's still no business like minding your own. I hope this is reaching you in good spirits and good health with good vibes going all the way around you personally and professionally. Subscribe to the podcast if you haven't. 5 star, wherever you get your pods helps us to continue to grow the NYB community. And of course, you can always find me and the team at champronbrooks.com. That's champronbrooks.com. Check me out on Clubhouse. Shout out to those of you that have connected with me there. We're having we're having tremendous conversations there on Clubhouse. So check me out there at Champ Ron. Got a couple clubs out there, some great conversations on a myriad of different topics. So currently, if you're an iPhone user, sorry for those of you that have the Android. I think they're coming your way. But right now, today, as of the recording of this podcast, they are strictly kind of Apple iPhone users there for the Clubhouse app. So definitely, if you're interested and you want to tap in, definitely do so. Definitely do so. Listen, today I'm excited about our guest that's joining us today. And for those of you that are watching the podcast, you can see she's got a beautiful setup there, and she's got her dog back there who's just kind of hanging out with us as well. My dogs may make an appearance at some point here while we're having this conversation. But Lisa Fabrega is our guest today. She's a leadership coach. She helps ambitious people just like yourself that are listening to expand their capacity. We're going to get into that today, that capacity, the insight that she's going to share with us on how to handle growth and wealth and success. Very important. As we're going through these unprecedented times in YB, that you have somebody, you have to have coaching and development. Now, I've told you guys, when I played basketball, I had coaching, right? You had development. I had to be around the game, right? I had to learn. I had to play the game. I had to make mistakes, right? And I had to come back and get what? Coaching. It's about coaching and development to help. And it doesn't matter how big you get or how many followers you get or how many DMs you get or that sort of thing. You always need coaching and development. And Lisa provides that in her own unique way. And so, Lisa, thank you so much for taking time to be here on the Minding Your Business podcast.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad to have you. And, let's dive right in because for those that aren't familiar with you, Lisa, now I've had a chance to kind of, look over your bio and see you post these great social media posts that are engaging and you have beautiful photos and things like that. You do a tremendous job, you and your team. And so yeah, you're welcome. And so share with us just kind of who you are and kind of what your journey has been to get to where you are today.
Yeah, and that's what I do. I help people expand their capacity to receive, hold, and handle their next level. And that goes from whether you're beginning your journey or you're already well on the way. I have clients who are just starting their businesses to clients who are on $100 million company boards. So really capacity work is something we all need to be doing. And the metaphor I love to use for it is, I have two metaphors that explain what capacity is. So the way I define capacity is your ability to hold, handle, and receive every next level of your growth. Now, that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with your strategy. And the thing is that we tend to rely on strategies and hacks and performance hacks and all sorts of things to try to be able to hold more, because the bigger we get, the more people want things from us, the higher the stakes, the more we have to deliver. And I noticed that a lot of people that were coming to work with me were having trouble. They would get to a certain point in their success, and then all sorts of problems would start happening, whether it be emotional problems in terms of like dealing with the stressors of being more visible and having more people relying on you, to team problems, to questioning their purpose and whether they had even started the right business, to being nervous about being more visible. So the metaphor I like to use is, when you don't have capacity, it's like those people who win the lottery and they'll win like $150 million. And then 5 years later, you hear they're broke.
Right.
Like, how did you lose 150? Because they never they got the money, but they never expanded what I call their money capacity. And so they spent down to the set point they were used to instead of
Mm,
capacity to hold more money and to grow and know what to do with that money, how to invest it, what's the best place to put it, what's the smart way to manage this. Or I also equate it to, if you're in a room and you're like a 40-watt bulb, you're only going to shine at 40 watts. But if you want to shine at 100 watts, you've got to take that bulb out and replace it with a 100-watt bulb. So
right.
process of expanding your capacity, you're just capable of navigating so much more the more you grow. So you never have doubts or fears, because the common thing I hear is, I want to do that, but can I handle it? What if this happens to me? Or what if I get swept away into it? And you don't ask yourself those questions when you are working on your capacity, because you know that if you want to get here, you just need to expand your capacity to get there. And then your capacity will match the size of your goals, and you'll be good, and you'll be able to navigate the challenges that come at those levels of success with ease and confidence. So that's what capacity work is all about. In terms of how I got here, I actually started as a health coach. I
Wow.
was this was 12 years ago. And actually, I was an actor for a long time before that in New York City. And I
Okay.
started my business on a whim, because the jobs that I had at the time, they were day jobs. I was working in a financial firm, and they kept promoting me. And when you get getting promoted, they have a problem with you leaving to go on an audition, because now you're getting a higher and higher level job, and you've got to
Right.
be there. And so I ran into a friend on the street who was on Broadway, a fellow actor, and she said to me, I started my own coaching business, and now I can make my own hours, and I'm making money. And I was like, wait a minute, if you can do that, I can do that too. I enrolled in coaching school, and I started health coaching people. But soon after, I started noticing that my clients weren't talking to me about food after a couple of sessions. We were talking about their leadership challenges, which were causing them to not eat well, or their eating well was making them not be able to show up with the energy they needed to tackle the leadership challenges they were facing at work or in their own businesses. And so that's how my business evolved. And at this point, I've worked with over 74,000 people in the last 12 years. And when you work with that many people, you start to notice patterns. And
Right.
that is how my entire capacity framework, there's 6 capacities I notice most people struggle with. And that's how I've gotten to where I am today.
Yeah, no, that's incredible, Lisa. Just an incredible journey. And, you talked about, kind of after working with that many people, kind of, those different kind of almost pillars of capacity, right? And you talked about kind of 6 of them. I'd love to hear kind of what those are, though, as you break down capacity and, how we can apply that to our lives personally and professionally.
Sure. I love talking about this. And in fact, one thing I invite anybody listening to do is use this as a quiz and give yourself a score on each one of these, because that's going to start telling you immediately where your capacity deficits are. Because the first step to expanding our capacity is getting clear on where the deficit is. Because a lot of times we think it's money, but it's actually visibility, or we think it's this, but it's actually that. So the first capacity that I've noticed most ambitious people struggle with is money capacity. Money is a top
Yes.
topic. Everybody wants to talk about it.
Right.
The way I define money capacity is your ability to earn, save, and invest larger and larger amounts every year. So if you were to score yourself between 0 to 10, 0 being bad, 10 being great, how are you doing in your money capacity? Are you earning, saving, and investing larger and larger amounts every year? Then we have visibility capacity. This is a huge one. I would say it's one of our most popular ones. And this is your ability to allow all of you to be fully seen in your work and your life. I have so many people that I've worked with who do not show the most special, awesome parts of them in their work. And they're experiencing a plateau in the business, and the business won't go above a certain level of revenue. The minute they start showing who they really are and showing more of their personality in their business and unhiding some of those parts, the revenue takes off again. And so, are you
Yeah.
allowing yourself to be fully seen? Score yourself there. Then we have purpose capacity. And your purpose capacity is when your inside matches your outside. And what I mean by that is, so many people have an expert tell them, hey, you should start a business this because it's a popular topic. And they go, okay, but they
Right.
never, yeah, is that aligned with what I actually am called here to do, like what my special skill set is? And so that's purpose capacity. So ask yourself, is my inside matching my outside? Then we have embodiment capacity, which is the fourth capacity that I notice most people struggle with. Another very popular one, because this is your emotional, your mental, and your spiritual capacity as you grow your business, as you
Mm.
grow your career. Because I don't just work with business owners, even in your own life, are people able to set you off real easy? Do you have the capacity to have really difficult conversations with team members that you're working with in a way that aligns with your values? Does a launch gone wrong throw you into depression for 2 weeks, or like cause you to freak out on your whole team? Like what is your emotional, spiritual, and mental capacity? Because the leader really needs to have that on point, because as more challenges come your way, you can't be sidelined by the top. You got to know to just pivot quickly and keep going without
Absolutely.
your emotions, slow you down. And also, people are looking to you as a leader, and the way you model is how they model, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then the fifth of the six capacities is structural capacity. Another one that's like a silent culprit that a lot of people don't realize is causing the issues. Your structural capacity is the teams and foundations that hold you up to go to your next level. So a lot of
Mm.
people put up with team members that are great at their jobs but bad with attitude, and that causes a huge energy drain for the CEO in the business, because constantly having to spend energy battling the person's attitude and you're keeping them on just because they're good. I say fire them, because they're going to poison the whole team.
Facts.
A lot of people don't have their life teams in place. And what I mean by a life team is like, what's the help you have at home in order for you to focus on your career and your goals? Like, do you have a cleaning crew that does a mediocre job and you're like cleaning up after they leave? Why? That's your precious time. Hire a cleaning crew that's going to do a good job, that you don't have to do their job for them after they leave. Do you have help at home? Do you need that? Do you need to ask your kids to fold their laundry instead of you doing it? Do you need to ask your partner to step in and help you more? What is your structural capacity doing? Score yourself there.
Yeah.
And then the last capacity is another very important one, and that's boundary capacity. Boundaries. As you grow, you've got to say no to more things. And it's not,
Exactly.
and it's not just saying no to other people, but you got to say no to yourself. Because
Yes.
sometimes we want to do all the things and we can't. Or sometimes we want to have like an hour-long anxious spiral. We don't, and you have to be able to stop yourself and go, I'm not going there. I need to focus on solving the problem instead of going into this, like, I call it doom spiraling. And that's another example of setting a boundary with ourselves. And the caveat I'll add to this last piece is that a lot of people, the mistake they make with their boundaries is that they set boundaries that work for them now. But if you are,
Mm.
let's say you've got a goal to get to $2 million next year in your business, right? Just an
Right.
example. You need to set the boundaries that your $2 million self would set, not the boundaries that your $500,000 self would set, because
Mm.
those are very different boundaries. And if you have boundaries that don't match your $2 million self, you're not going to get to $2 million.
Right.
So those are the six main capacities I have noticed all these years working with so many successful and ambitious people that we tend to struggle with. And I call the combination of all the six capacities the capacity code. And like, you have your own one, I have my own capacity code. It's as unique as a fingerprint. And when I start working on one, the other ones start to change. They're like a deeply woven fabric.
Wow. Yeah. Lisa, that is extremely rich. That is extremely rich. I love that. Yeah, that is extremely rich. You touched on some things that really resonated with me as someone that was a 17-year banker. I was in leadership a majority of those years in my banking career prior to kind of launching, my business full time. And boundary capacity is something I still struggle with at times.
Mhm.
And you just defined it as setting the boundaries for where I want to go. or what it is that I want to be versus what I am today. And that's something I've struggled with because we were talking offline about working with a young lady that I'm coaching in the real estate business, and finding, being able to, place those boundaries on how much time and how I allot, myself in terms of availability, to be able to do things with people has been something I've always struggled with. I'm a giver at heart,
Mm-hmm.
and I like to try to be there and got a soft heart for people, to help them be successful. But that's also been something that's been a hindrance for me, and sometimes it's a hindrance in the growth of my business,
Yeah.
because I'm always trying to make myself available and kind of see the best in people. But I love what you said at the end of that. That was very rich and resonate with me. I jotted that down kind of here on my little notepad that I keep, about setting that boundary for, not so much that end goal, but for that next step. I think that's very rich, and I think a lot of us that are listening, can really take heed to that. And the visibility capacity I wanted to ask you about as well, because that God, that was rich. I come across a lot of people that, whether it's in their business or their personal life, right? Either one, Lisa, they have concerns or fears about, being seen, right? I hear this all the time, particularly from women business owners. They'll say, I don't want to be the face of the company. I don't want people to see me. I just want to have the brand logo and have that kind of be what drives it, right? And I don't want to be seen. And I think it's sometimes, either internally they're concerned, or there's a fear of, being judged, right? Because so much of our world is, unfortunately judged by outward appearance and things like that. And I think more so than men, right? I hear that a lot more from women, from a visibility capacity standpoint. Can you kind of speak to that? Is that something that you see and have come across with the people that, you've interacted with?
I know. I think you bring up a really good point. I think that women do tend to have I think men have visibility capacity issues too, but I
Yeah.
think it's different. It's a different energy, and it shows up differently. But for women, I agree completely. It is a challenge because it doesn't feel safe for women to be powerful and show up in their power. I literally just was reading a colleague's story today where, um, a man who had worked with her a few years ago, contacted her to hire her again, but her rates had gone up significantly in those 3 years, because 2 to 3 years, 'cause she has been building her portfolio and working with some pretty amazing people. And when she sent him her new prices, he said to her, well, I can't, if you won't do it for the old price, I can't do it. Your price has gone up significantly. And if you can't do it, then you need to help me find someone to. Can you imagine?
Wow.
Like,
What the?
what? 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 I mean, I was just, my jaw was on the floor. And I think that
Oh, I bet.
lot of women have experiences like this where it's like, how dare you raise your rates, and or how dare you be outspoken. I mean, we can even see it. I absolutely love Meghan Markle. I love her. She's my neighbor, like she lives in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I think she is such an intelligent, well-spoken, amazingly impactful, powerful woman. And I am just fascinated at how, if you just look at the media and the types of words they use to describe her, you can really see the news outlets are trying to knock her down a peg, and ones are uplifting her. I mean, I've just, and just the things they publish about her. So even that, like as a woman myself, when I see how the media treats her, I
Yeah.
think, well, I better prepare myself because it's going to be the same stuff for me, you know? Um,
Yeah.
and I think women also have greater pressures of looking a certain way. We've got all of the media bombarding us about our appearance and how we should look and what we should weigh. And men get that too, though. But in terms of, the way it shows up for men is I actually worked with a male client a few months ago on an intensive. We did like an intensive day, and
Yeah.
his fear of visibility was that he was supporting a family member in his business and was really a gem in that business and really that business better. But he wanted to strike out on his own while still supporting the family business. And he was
Ah,
nervous. He was really nervous about his family member being triggered by him being successful in his business, thinking that he was going to leave the family business. So that's
I
how the
got you.
visibility was shown him. So he was kind of holding back and not really pushing the new business forward because he didn't want to upset the family member. So those are two types of visibility capacity issues.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, just to go over those for those that are taking notes and that are listening, the six kind of capacity types that you mentioned, financial capacity, visibility capacity, purpose capacity, embodiment capacity. Ooh, that's rich as well. Structural capacity, and then boundary capacities.
Yeah.
Um, so MYB, make sure that you're jotting those down and do a self assessment. I'm going to go back and do that as well. But do an honest self assessment of that. Be honest with yourself, right? And then where you see that there's opportunity or gaps, right? Go forth with addressing those in positivity. And I believe we'll all see ourselves be just a little bit better
Yeah.
by doing that. So, Lisa, thank you so much for that. And
Pleasure.
I want to, yeah, absolutely. And I want to get your thoughts here around with the current pandemic, right? And so, as you're working with people, coaching and developing people, let's start pre-pandemic, right? So 2019, the world's kind of running how it normally is, right? We all have our lives, whatever. Yeah, can you remember that?
Yeah, I look at pictures on my phone of 2019 and I'm like, "Oh, Lisa, you had no idea what was coming."
Right. Yeah. That's funny. You go back and look at that and you think of all the things we used to whine and gripe about, about being in at events and being in large crowds and waiting in line and being around people, right? People are always griping about being around people. God, I'm so tired. I wish I could go somewhere and all these people, like blah, blah, blah. And then it's funny how a year of quarantine now, and I see this in my real estate business. When I go out and what we call driving for dollars or like driving for opportunity, I'll knock on doors, because so many people are at home now, right? And so I'm having face-to-face conversations with people. They're almost like, yes, a human being I can talk to. Yes, yes, please stay, have some tea. And I'm having these conversations, right? So it's just funny how a year of that can change our perspective. Now we seek those things and we realize that a lot of those things are bringing people together as social beings, have social and economic impacts,
Yeah.
right? So much of our economy is driven by us coming together, right? And so, with the pillars that you shared around capacity, kind of, I guess two part, Lisa, pre-pandemic, what that was looking like, and then as the onslaught of the pandemic came along. Now, have you seen perspectives change, or maybe your coaching style, has that evolved any through that period now, or has it remained pretty much the same, pre or currently during the pandemic?
Yeah. That's such a great question. I feel like my work has not changed because I am addressing capacity issues, and what greater unveiling of what your capacity issues are that you've been ignoring than a pandemic?
Yeah, right.
I mean, and we had 2020, we had one of the best years ever in my business because there were just so many people who were realizing, "Oh my gosh, I have been solely focused on strategizing and doing the numbers, pushing the business forward, and completely ignoring that I'm trying to grow something without matching the capacity to grow it." And
Mm,
we can get away with that for a little bit. But when we get hit with a challenge, that's when we start to see. And so I've tried to tell people, like, how about we work on that before you hit the challenge so that when you hit the challenge, you're ready for it versus now you're scrambling. And I saw that, when the pandemic first started, it was just like I was just thinking this morning about it actually. So it's perfect that you asked me this question.
yeah.
Really got to see what people's true capacity was. And there's a lot of people who talk a big game about they're these big leaders. And when that pandemic hit, they were like Chicken Little, screaming, running around, not knowing what to do. You know? And they were making
Right.
bad business decisions because they didn't have the capacity to take a moment and go, hold up, let me read what's going on in the environment. Do I need to shift? Because some people did need to pivot their businesses. You know, if
Yes.
primarily in person, you might need to go online a little more. If your model doesn't work online, you might need to, you know, like you knocking on doors, you might need to figure out different ways to get to people that are still safe and honoring the guidelines. And there were some people I saw make some real bad decisions, really bad
Wow.
decisions business wise. And I'm talking well known, very successful people. And I went, oh, you don't have embodiment capacity. I could see it. It was like X-ray vision when the pandemic broke out. And then
Right.
then they're making decisions that are actually harming their business in the long run, you know, and even investment decisions too. Like I invest in the stock market and I immediately thought, oh, I better buy some Zoom stock. And I bought a bunch of Zoom stock and now that stock is like so just the ability to not be freaked out and stay calm internally so that you can take a look at what's happening, pivot with confidence, and know what you need to do and what you don't need to do that everybody's doing is huge.
Right.
And so because of that, because there are a lot of business leaders and you know, career people who we just that's just how we're taught. It's nobody's fault. I'm not trying to shame anybody. We're just taught to be
Yeah.
strategically oriented and we don't stop to think about our capacity, which is why I teach this. And so I had a lot of business people and just lots of people in general coming to me and going, "Oh my god, 50% of my revenue is gone because I was doing in-person events. I don't know what to do. I'm freaking."
Right.
And I'm like, this is where you need embodiment capacity because you've got to keep yourself calm, grounded, and rooted in your own internal wisdom that built the success and use that to do this pivot. And you got to make
Yes.
this quick and you cannot take a year to do it because the train's going to pass you by. So that is what I've noticed. And so a lot more people were coming to me in 2020 that because get by on their strategy anymore, that the world is now demanding so much more capacity from its leaders. So my work didn't change, but I certainly noticed a large uptick in the amount of people who were needing it. So it was kind of my time to shine, to be honest, which is
Yeah.
terrible.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I hate the fact that like everybody kind of woke up to capacity in a pandemic, but
Right.
these types our life's always going to have, you know, this, our life's always going to have a challenge. If it's not a pandemic, it's something else going on. You can't
Yeah.
let things throw you off. You just got to keep going and building your business and building your work in the world.
Yeah, no, without question. I know I love that response, Lisa, because you're exactly right. That embodiment capacity is something, people being able to manage their emotions and then the relationships that they have. Um, yeah, that is so critical. You know, again, pandemic or not, but the pandemic, I think, just brought on a certain level of pressure that now people had to perform. Right? It's kind of like in sports, you know, in the live game where someone just hands you the ball, right, and all attention comes to you, right, as a leader. You know, so you know the pandemic is, excuse me, shoving the ball in someone's chest.
Mhm.
Personally, you're right, because a lot of relationships have been impacted, positive or negative. As far as family relationships because of the onslaught of the pandemic. So now family leaders, whether it's moms and dads or husbands and wives or whatever it is, now get the ball shoved in their chest, right? And
Yes.
the game's live, right? And so when I played football, I was on the kickoff return team. When I caught the ball on the kickoff, I had 11 guys coming, all looking for me, right? And they're looking to take my head off, right? And so that's what I think happened. And I think for some people, that level of attention and the stress and things like that, some people were equipped to rise to the occasion, and then some weren't, based on a number of different factors. So I definitely love what the way you responded with that. That is gives some very good insight and perspective. And so as you see now, and we're starting to experience some things open up, right, as it relates to the pandemic. You got vaccinations, all that type of thing going on, and however people feel about all that stuff is, they can talk about that on another podcast. But we're not going to talk about that here. We don't care about the political piece. Yeah, everybody's got the politics of what they think about these things, but just solely from the what we're talking about, Lisa, where do you see leadership as we come out of this? What do you think are some of the pillars, quite frankly, that people pick up on, particularly around capacity, that they'll be better for from going through such an unprecedented time like this pandemic?
Yeah, what a great question. Another great question. I think that our world is permanently changed. I don't think we're ever going to go back to 2019. Like, we just got to let it go. Everything, the landscape of our world has changed. The landscape of business has changed. I think you're going to see a lot of companies switching to work from home, because I think a lot of people who got to work from home realized, oh my gosh, I love this so much. And it's actually, I remember when I used to work in corporate, just to move a cubicle was $10,000.
Yeah, that's right.
It's really effective cost savings for a company to have employees working from home. So I think we're going to notice, like, that's not going to go away. I think we're going to have a larger percentage of people going online. There's going to be more people online because they discovered a revenue stream online that they didn't have in person. I think that like, large events are going to be impacted for a while until we have a large percentage, enough of the population vaccinated or immune in some way to what's going on.
Yeah.
And I think that the world is not the same. And so I think that the world is going to require, from here until we die, more capacity from us than we were used to having to give. And I think
Yes.
that's a good thing, because it's more personal responsibility versus depending on outside systems to tell us what we can and can't do. Um, I think that there were a lot of things that came to a head in 2020 as well, not just the pandemic, but we got to see a lot of systemic issues in our society that we were just comfortably ignoring, or some people were comfortably ignoring, right? And now it's
Right.
like in your face, and now you got to deal with it. I think that's a good thing, because I like to say, the stuff rotting underneath the surface has to come to the surface so you can remove it. And it's hard work and it's not pleasant, but then you're really happy you removed it. And then you can
Right.
move forward in a way that you couldn't, because that stuff was weighing you down. So I think societally and globally, we're seeing a lot of people reckon with some very big systemic issues. And that requires capacity of our leaders like never before. Like, you can't just get away on your privileges anymore. There's real accountability coming up for a lot of people, and it's necessary. And
Yes.
we also need to start thinking in a more connected way. Like, what impacts you is going to impact me. And this pandemic equalized everything, like, just because you have more money doesn't mean you're not going to get this virus, right? Like, the virus
Right.
doesn't pick only certain types of people to give itself to. Everybody
Right.
is impacted by this. So I think in some ways it created greater inequalities. I think a lot of women have lost their jobs because they're the primary caretakers. And I think the impact on women is going to be, we're going to have to make up for that for a long time.
Yeah.
I think what I like one thing I like to say is there are 4 pillars in capacity. I don't normally talk about this, but I'll talk about it with you.
Yeah.
Um,
Please.
what I think makes up capacity is 4 things: discernment. And discernment means the ability to tell the difference between what is your ego and what is your, like, inner wisdom making a decision. Because if your ego
Hmm.
alone makes the decision, it's a bad decision. Because your ego is really concerned with survival instinct and fear.
Right. Exactly.
Big important decisions. So that's your discernment. So when you have discernment and you can go, no, I'm not going to make that decision because that's an ego decision, then you're making a decision from a grounded inner wisdom place. Then we've got equanimity. Equanimity is the ability to stay grounded, calm, and centered no matter the storms around you. Very important quality in a leader, very important quality to have of capacity. That I call sovereignty. Sovereignty is the ability to be the ruler, to trust in your decisions despite what other people are doing, and not
Hmm.
second guess yourself. Just like when the pandemic broke out, a lot of people were like, "You got to do this, you got to do that. The sky is
Right.
falling, the sky is falling." And I just
Right.
I am going to shut my timeline down. I am not going to
Mm.
watch the news, and I'm going to proceed as I feel I should proceed based on what I know about my people. Um, and then finally, we have boundaries. And we've talked about boundaries already. So I think those four things, discernment, equanimity, sovereignty, and boundaries, are the four key things that anybody who wants to succeed as a leader is going to need moving forward. And those four things are what creates capacity, are the signs that you are a person with capacity.
Great way to define that. And discernment, equanimity, sovereignty, and boundaries. Those pillars that you mentioned, Lisa, that make up capacity. And NYB community, this is very rich, and I'm hope that you're taking from this some good insight that you can go and apply to your life personally and professionally. And Lisa, you touched on something around the pandemic that. And when I speak of the pandemic, you're exactly right. The pandemic went way beyond the virus, right? There are other pandemics that exist with us systemically, where we talk about social injustice with Black and brown people, and now even what's rising up more with people of Asian descent,
Yes.
with women, with people geographically, and politically, all these different systemic things that that have been created to divide, right? To kind of subjugate and divide. I summed it up with this kind of throughout last year and even into this year, that 2020 and now as we go into 2021, what was challenged in this country, Lisa, was actually our name, right? So the first word in our name, united, was challenged, right?
Yeah.
And these pandemics brought on and opened up the scab wounds of how we challenge united in United States of America. It's interesting. That's our first word, but we don't typically have that, right? And in some cases, we never have. Right?
Yep.
There's never been the united piece of it has never really existed, and so now those things are being exposed, and people who perpetuate crossing out that word in some cases in our country, those people are being exposed,
Yeah.
right? Those men and women are being exposed. And I think we're on this pathway, particularly as demographics change and as generations become more prominent, as younger generations become more prominent. Now you have millennials that are getting established into their 30s, who now are seeing, like you talked about the workforce. Now they're seeing that, you know what? I don't need to spend $3,000 a month to live in a closet in New York City. I can still work for the New York City company and move to Kansas City, right? Where now my $3,000 buys me a 3,500 square foot house in
Yep.
this suburban neighborhood. Now I can marry, my spouse. We can have children or whatever, however they decide to do that to grow their family. That's totally their choice. And I can continue to do these things, and I can get involved in this community, and it's not this, there's not 10 million people around in a 15-mile radius, right? And so I can do these things, right? And I think that's going to create opportunities and create challenges. And when you talked about leadership, I think one of the things we also saw is that corporate leaders had to engage more into capacity, more so than being a taskmaster or how many widgets have you sold, or how many inputs have you put into our tracking system or customer relationship management tool. It's, Lisa, tell me about what you have going on, right? How are things going in those six kind of types of capacity, right? That embodiment, the boundaries, the purpose, the visibility, the financial piece. Leaders who were successful, I think, coming out of 2020 through 2021 and whatever realities exist once the pandemic subsides, right? Because it means it's going to be, it's a COVID like the regular flu and everything else. It's been around since the beginning of time, and it'll be around once we're all gone, right? But that those things have all been challenged personally and professionally. I love the way you broke that down, and you're exactly right. That United States of America was challenged, and now what sets the stage for this next kind of way of living, what becomes kind of a standard, is going to be leadership, coaching and development, and those that embrace that, those that get with people like you and can help identify that and then execute on it and be a little bit better, right? I think those are the folks that are going to stand out. And I think the folks that don't, the exposure of that is going to be bigger than in the past. See, in the past, I think you didn't have that exposure. You could hide, you could suck at your leadership and all that type of thing. You could be, but you could hide behind those systemic things, right? That gave certain people advantages.
Yep.
And that's being broken down. And so now you're seeing generations of those people feel challenged, right? And they're uncomfortable because they can't hide behind those things, right? And then you've got this new generation of younger people, right, that are coming and saying, you know what? You know what I mean? That's not right, right? And it's funny how the camera phone can help, as we've had it for many years, how the camera phone and social media and those things can help expose those things with all its flaws.
Yep.
What it's done to help remove the veil on these things is tremendous. So I love what you shared with that. But did you have any additional thoughts, kind of around that notion and those points?
Just complete agreement with everything you're saying. I think it's a good thing that all these things are being exposed. And I think the only people who are uncomfortable and angry about it are people who were benefiting from those inequalities. And they're mad. They're holding on for dear life. They're that privilege that shouldn't have been theirs to begin with. And we all have to consider each other. We can't just think only about ourselves. And that's also challenging the landscape of leadership, I think, because I think that leadership has been taught often by one subset, or at least it's taught by everybody, but the people who have risen to the top is a very specific type of person with privileges. And now there's all these people coming in and going, wait a minute, that's not leadership. Like, leadership is this. And we're looking at a very old school, like patriarchal kind of view of how leadership is. And for example, that leadership, one of the things I love about President Obama that I loved about the leadership he displayed was when he cried, when he was when he was talking about I forget what it was. It was the shooting that happened in that church.
Yeah, the church. Yeah.
Cried. And just I remember just thinking, wow, the times are really changing for the better when I saw that. Because here we have the president of the United States, man, showing emotion and vulnerability, not weakness, showing vulnerability. And we need that in our leaders. This whole, like, we can never show weakness. We can never show that we have any emotions, or that I can never let anybody know that I don't know the answer to this question. That's very old, kind of toxic leadership style. And I'm seeing that crumbling. And it's very heartening to see it crumbling, because it's kind of what's created a lot of the problems that we have, whether in business or in our world in general.
Yeah.
I think we need more leaders that are emotionally facile, that they can flex and bend with the times, that they are tuning in. A good leader is tuning into the people they serve and going, what's going on with the general energy here? What do I need to bring to the space to elevate this energy versus what is about me. I want to do this. I want to do this for myself. You're all going to have to comply to what I want. That's the old kind of leadership view. So I think what you're talking about is also just showing how the older generations and the younger generations coming in, even the leadership landscape is being defined. And we can't have that very rigid leadership anymore in this world. This world is rapidly changing all the time.
Yes.
And you got to be able to if you're playing, for example, if you're playing football on the field and there's 11 guys coming at you, you
Right.
can't freeze, or you can't go, no, don't come at me. Like,
right.
figure out what you're going to do fast within seconds. And I think that's what the world is requiring of us. And if you're using all your energy to pretend that you know everything and that you don't have any emotions, and then good luck with that. That's not going to work. You're going to go dinosaur.
Yep, absolutely. And using our football analogy, for my audience tends to love some of the sports analogies, but when you're doing that, keep in mind that you're not looking forward. You got to catch the ball first,
yes.
Right? And so the first thing you do, so you think of your steps, right? And this relates to what we're saying today as it relates to leadership. I think it's kind of unique. May have to trademark this. So as you're on a kickoff, you imagine you have on a football helmet, right? You got football pads, right? So you're weighed down, right? You have the weight of, just like as a leader, you have the weight of some of the organization, how your decisions rest on the direction of the organization, as well as how they rest on things that happen in your household, whether you're single or you're in a committed relationship or whatever the situation is. And so when you look up, I remember, Lisa, that when I first, early on in my life, when I first was doing kickoff returns, you try to look, because not only do you know they're coming, you hear them coming. You hear the steps, you hear guys yelling, say, get, and not using the most savory language about you when they're coming towards you. Right. And you can't really see much to the side, right? Because you've got this helmet on. Right. And so you look up, you got to catch the ball, but you got to catch the ball and try to somewhat judge how far away the threat is. Right. Where, because there's a difference between catching the ball and someone's right in your face about to hit you as soon as you catch it. Versus if they're 20, 30 yards back, right? And so I equate that to what we're talking about today in leadership, is that the pandemic brought on that those defenders that are coming to you now are a little closer than they were in 2019, right? There's a little bit more eyes watching you, right? That, like you talked about, than in the past. Right. So in the past, when, those past rigid leaders would drop the ball and do some different things, there's always someone that could come, well, this wasn't right, or they could blame, there's always ways to deflect that. Now that's visible. And so, I use that as that analogy with what we're talking about, is that there's those obstacles you're always going to have. There's going to be the weights. There's going to be a lot of noise going on, but you have to focus on catching the ball. Right. Even when, no matter who's on the field, no matter who's coming at you, you got to first focus on catching the ball, because if you don't catch the ball, it's a complete moot point, because now all kinds of chaos goes on. And if you ever want to be involved in some chaos, let a fumble happen where everybody's going for the ball. Right. And, there's there's, everything's on the table. Right. Tripping, punching, hitting below the belt, spitting, all kinds of stuff goes on, right, in those piles. When, for those of you that watch football, sometimes you may be really surprised at what goes on in those piles when people are tackled, right? Things that are said, things that are done, that don't always get captured by the TV camera, but that you have to endure. It's the same in your business, right? There are things that you guys go through, and Lisa's talked about these, that everybody doesn't see, right? Success, failures, those type of things everybody doesn't see. And so it is unworldly tremendous, how so much of our life intersects, right? And the importance of having someone like our guest today, to be on your team and to help you guide through that. And those that recognize that, I think, are going to be successful. And so I definitely want you guys to connect with Lisa, and her contact information, her website. We're going to get to that in a second, how you can connect with Lisa and her team. But as we kind of wrap up, because, hey, listen, Lisa, this has been, I can't stress enough how impactful I think this conversation has been, and everything that you've shared with us on today, and taking time to do that out of your busy schedule. One last thing. What are one or two things that have really worked for you personally, that you think someone taken away from this conversation? So they get done listening to this. Oh, I love Lisa. I'm gonna go catch up with, I'm gonna go follow her on social media and do all the things we're getting ready to ask them to do. But what's one or two things that they could take away that have worked for you, that you believe will work for them, that they can incorporate in their personal and professional life?
Yes, great question. I have two. Number one, when you finish listening to this, look at your capacities, and, like you said, be honest with yourself. Be really honest, and sit with those capacities, and pick out the top two that you need to work on. Because if you just focus, because it's easy to feel like, gosh, I have to work on all of these. I get that. They're all connected. Of course, you're going to feel that way. But if you're honest with yourself, which ones are the top two?
Mm.
When you have those top two, I want you to just pick one thing you're going to do that week for each one of those two. So two things you can do to start expanding that capacity in the next 2 weeks? Just just one out of each capacity. And it
Mm,
can be a small thing like, you know what? I've been putting off making the edits to my book. I got to just do that.
yes.
Right? Or I've been putting off hiring that person. I need to hire that person. Or it might be firing somebody.
Right. Exactly.
Just the one thing. Keep it small, keep it focused. And the second thing I would say is I really what has really worked well for me, and a lot of people don't talk about this, is I really focus on curating my environment. And what I mean by that is who do I surround myself with?
Mm,
If I want to grow my money capacity and I keep hanging out around people who have low money capacity, my money capacity is not going to grow. If I'm
facts.
hanging around people who think money is terrible and only for greedy people, I'm not going to make more money. That's all I'm going to
Right.
hear. So I'm going to go seek out the people who have a healthy relationship with money and think money can be used to do great things, right? Don't have shame around money. Um, whatever capacity is that you have out of that top two, ask yourself, how can I better? Now, we can't get rid of family members, right? But I can limit my conversations about money with them. If they
Yeah.
start talking about money in that way that feels negative, I can get up from the table and or change the topic, you know?
Yes.
I don't have to get into it with them because every little bit of information you're consuming is impacting your mindset and it's impacting your capacity. So that's something that that's why a lot of the main program that I have is a group program because I think that you need to be in a group of people and surround yourself with people who have the same goals and who are making it okay to do what you are doing and not making it, not talking negatively about it. So that's one thing I have done throughout my whole career, which I credit with all the success that I have, is I just had an instinct that I should probably stop hanging out with those people if I wanted to grow in this area. Or I should avoid conversations about this topic with this person because they don't have a good mindset around that area that I'm trying to grow within myself. And I want to go put myself in groups of people who are better than me, who are ahead of me, because that's going to pull me up to their level. So that's another thing that I would really encourage you to think about is if I'm having capacity issues, who am I surrounding myself with?
Yes. My goodness, Lisa, that, I'm looking at this, right? Be honest with yourself. Taking those top two things when you talked about, those kind of pillars and types of capacity, taking one thing and just going and executing on that this week or this upcoming, days and weeks and months. And then curating your environment. That, you and I could probably start part two of this and just jump on that point. Right. And we'd be on this all day long.
Oh yeah.
That is so critically important because if you think about it, even when, if you think about mistakes that we've made, right? When I was around the wrong crowd doing things, even in my youth, that's what I did. I curated my environment. When I wanted to do wrong, I hung around. I didn't want to hang around people that wanted to do right. Right. If someone was talking, if we decided we were going to go, I remember in high school, right? Real quick story. Um, we made the decision that we were going to, because our school mascot was the Mustangs, right? The kind of the horse, the Mustang. So we had the bright idea that we were going to go to our rival school's football field and we were going to dump manure on the middle of their field, right? The geniuses that we were. And so anybody that talked about not doing it, we didn't want to be around, right? If someone said, well, Ron, you know what? That's probably not a good idea. What the hell are you talking about? Like, of course it's a good idea, right? That's our rival, right? We're going to show them, right? And they were right, but we all curated our environment. So what happens is we started gravitating away from the people that weren't on our wavelength towards the people that were.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it works in all these different areas or kind of quote unquote capacities. Is that when we talked about football earlier, when I wanted to play football, I wanted to play basketball, whatever, that environment was curated. I watched it. I played it. I consumed it. Right. I was around it all the time. I did it. It's what I thought about. I would read magazines about it, right? And I would do all these different things. And it's the same thing with what Lisa's talking about today with curating your environment. You have to surround yourself, and that can be difficult, right? Because mama may not always understand, and daddy may not understand, and mama and grandmama and auntie, and they may have done great things for you and I believe they're tremendous people, right? But they don't have your vision, right? Because it wasn't given to them, right? And so they may look at things through their glasses, right? Through their lenses to apply to you, right? And like Lisa talked about, those fears, those concerns, it's easy for people to project those on you, right? And so you have to be very intentional about curating your proper environment when you want to go to that next level. You have to be around the type of people that are what you're wanting to be, right? And so whatever age that you are, whether you're young listening to this or whether you're a little more seasoned, right? This can apply. So I love what Lisa said about that, because that is so critical at all levels of life, right? Is to be able to curate that environment and be around the proper people and consume the right things, and that are going to help edify you. And so again, Lisa makes a very strong point as we close out this, that properly curate your environment, and that's something you can do fairly immediately, MYB community. So I challenge us all to look at doing that and implement that. Lisa, listen, this has been extremely rich. You've just been coming with one gem after the other. It's not even gems, you're just tossing boulders at us. um, so, I love that. Lisa Fabrega is our guest today. You can go to lisafabrega.com, right?
Yep.
All right. lisafabrega.com. Make sure you go there. Connect with Lisa. Connect with her on social media at Lisa Fabrega. I have done so, and I challenge you all to do so. She's got her Linktree link in there. Connect with her on all the levels that she has out there, and let her know that you heard her right here on the Minding Your Business podcast. And we want to make sure we continue to support Lisa. I'd love to have her back because she's just a wealth of knowledge, and she's fun too, right? So, this is tremendous, and definitely consider connecting with Lisa and having her as a part of your team. If you're looking to get just a little bit better personally and professionally. So Lisa, thank you so much. This has been a game-changing conversation for me, honestly, and definitely wish you the very best personally and professionally, and look forward to continue to connect with you. And anytime you have anything that you're doing, I want to know about it, whether it's books, whether it's articles, because I want to be able to share that with the audience as well. I like sharing those type of resources to help us all be a little better. So, whoever kind of manages that on your team, definitely plug me in. So we can continue to do that and help more people, right? And I know that's what it's all about. So thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me and for asking such wonderful questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to dive into some more. So as things start to evolve and that sort of thing, let's have you back, and we can have a few laughs about maybe some things that have evolved, and maybe some different things that you're seeing as the environment evolves, and maybe different things arise that we can talk about and address. So thank you so much, Lisa.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Right, excellent. You guys make sure you connect with Lisa. All the links are in the show notes. You know how we do MYB, so definitely give it up, show some love, and again, let Lisa know that you heard her here on the Minding Your Business podcast. And I challenge you, reach out to her and maybe share with her something that you did go implement. Say, hey Lisa, I took something in embodiment and really applied that. Let her know that. Because that's always great feedback that Lisa can take, is that to know that things that she's worked on and curated herself can help the rest of that. So don't be shy. Reach out to her. If you're shy about not reaching out to Lisa, you can reach out to me. Okay, and I'll be the filter. Good grief, guys. Some of you guys get you reach out to me and can you send this to Lisa? You can send it yourself, right? Don't feel.
You can send me an Instagram message. I don't
Yeah.
bite.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, she's not gonna bite your head off, right? So yeah, so definitely do that, MYB. As we get out of here, okay? And you guys, you know what I'm about to say, right? So I'm gonna keep saying it until we do it. There are three things that make us, that unite us, right? And we talked about this in our interview, but there are three things that unite us all, no matter where we're from, no matter what side of the tracks, no matter what you look like in the mirror, no matter any of that stuff, right? There are three things that unite us all. We all want to be a little bit better for ourselves, a little bit better for our families, and a little bit better for our communities, right? Everybody you come across, that's ultimately our goal. We have different ways of getting there, right? And as long as those ways are productive and positive, but we all have different ways of getting there. But keep that in mind with everybody that you come in contact with, that's ultimately where we're trying to go. And if you keep that in mind, we can all make this place just a little bit better together. Okay, so keep that in mind when you're interacting with people, when you're driving through your communities, and you're coming across different people. No matter, again, all the different ways that we sometimes can judge people. Just remember, we all want to be a little better for ourselves, a little better for our families, and a little better for our communities. All right, take care. Make sure you check the show notes and connect with Lisa. I want to hear about this, so I'm gonna be following up with some of you, and you know who you are. I'm gonna follow up and see if any of you connected with Lisa. But listen, have a great and tremendous rest of your day. Positive vibes and all those things to all of you. And we'll catch you next time. Chaperone, the Mind Your Business podcast.